on, everybody? Welcome back to Get Bucked for the Breeders' Cup. I am your host, Ryan Anderson. And as always, I get to be joined by my co-host, Jackson Muniz. Jackson, how's it going?
Doing good, man. We're almost there. We're
almost there. This is our final Breeders' Cup show on the road to the Breeders' Cup, obviously. Today we are going over the last 5 races that we need to touch on, that being the Breeders' Cup Distaff, the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf, the Breeders' Cup Turf, the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, and, of course, the 14-horse field of the Breeders' Cup Classic. I am so excited to get into that. Real quick before we do, check out the link in the description to go sign up for Breeders' Cup Power Picks. You have until tomorrow at noon Eastern. It's HHHRacingPodcast.com. $30 if you are already a subscriber, $35 if you're not. It's 30-plus pages of content, and it is phenomenal, honestly. So please go check that out. Real quick giveaway announcement. Michael Soletto, we mentioned this on yesterday's show. You are the winner of the first book giveaway. And that is, please reach out to me some way, shape, or form. Just get in touch with me so I can ship you that book. Congratulations. Or if you want an audio book, that's also an option. We are, again, going over all of the biggest races on Saturday. Please like, please subscribe, please turn on your notifications as we have, gone fast and furious, Jackson. And we're not going to be doing this alone. We have a couple big guests on the way. The first of which is here. He is out on the West Coast, so I'm looking forward to seeing him out at Del Mar. He is your race caller at Monmouth Racetrack. He's your race caller all winter and spring at Oaklawn Park. It's none other than Matt Dinerman. Matt, how's it going?
Good, guys. Good to be on with you. I'm sure you're getting ready for the Breeders' Cup here, and we all are. And per usual in California, beautiful weather here, so really a big surprise there.
I hear some rumors that there might be some rain in the forecast on Saturday. I don't know how true they are, but that's the word on the street right now.
Yeah, it's California. Coming from San Diego, if there's a 10% chance of rain, everybody freaks out. But I'm a glass half full type of guy, so I'm hoping that even if we do get a little rain, that just means they won't have to use the sprinklers that day. So we'll see. I mean, it could affect some things, but I won't believe it until I see it.
Right.
Exactly.
I can only think of 2 times they've ever canceled a Del Mar, and I think I was there both times. So
yeah,
that's 2 in 25 years.
You're the bad luck. Get away from California.
Yeah, could be.
Matt, thanks for joining us again. Judging by your the reflection I can see behind you, it seems like you're out in Del Mar, or at least out on the West Coast, back in San Diego, enjoying the weather. But I saw on X you posted the picture of all the ducks in the Oaklawn racing booth. So you seem to be set up there and ready for a great season.
We're really excited for Oaklawn. For my second year here at Oaklawn, I am in San Diego right now at mom and dad's house, my childhood home, relaxing and taking some time off. So it just so happens the timing's perfect to go to the Breeders' Cup, but I'll stay put after the Breeders' Cup for probably 4 or 5 weeks of relaxation time. But the ducks, they have migrated from the east to the south to Arkansas. They're all in the booth right now getting a vacation from racing themselves. So we're going to have some new names at Oaklawn Park. Trainers, big horses. We got a Mike Stidham. He's going to show up with a string there. Phil D'Amato is going to be a new string to the circuit this year. I think Mike Maker is going to have an even bigger presence than he had last year. Hearing that there are a couple other names. Todd Fincher is one that he's going to have more horses than last year. Tom Amos usually ships in. He's actually going to have a stable this year there. So there's a lot of good stuff going on at Oaklawn, and we're expecting a full backstretch, big fields, and big purse money too. So it should be just a great product for everybody.
That's really exciting, and that definitely speaks to the quality of racing that Oaklawn puts out to get those big name trainers to ship over and have those full-time stables out there. So I'm excited for you, but that's looking ahead a little bit. We got to look ahead. 3 days, I think is what it is. Tuesday, 3 days to Friday, and then of course to Saturday, which is the races we're going to be talking about today. Starting with the Breeders' Cup Distaff, which features a grizzly bear, which I didn't know they could draw into the field. But of course, I'm speaking of Torpedo Anna. What were your thoughts when you saw this field draw after the late kind of defection of Idiomatic here?
Well, I figured Torpedo Anna would be the one to beat, and that she is, especially at 4 to 5 in the morning line. A filly like her, she's just been so consistent. She's danced a bunch of dances, has been as consistent as they come. And really looking at the post position, I don't think any post position's a problem, really. I mean, some horses, they get bad draws. We'll talk about later on a horse in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile that got an atrocious draw that's going to be one of the big names in the field. But Torpedo Anna, I don't think it really matters with her. So the draw post 2, I'm not concerned about it at all. She can go to the lead. She can settle just off the speed, which I think she might do with that Japanese invader in there. Awesome result in the field. I think she's going to get a good trip, and I think she's the one to beat. I am sort of in the camp that she wasn't cranked up for the Cotillion last time out. Multiple Grade 1 winner. Doesn't need to be cranked up for the Cotillion. Wants to win. You want to make money. But she did everything she needed to win. And with that in mind, she's going to come with her A game, I think, this time around. I thought she came with her B game at Parks and was just good enough that day. And she won, even though she won by a neck, she won like a filly that could have won by more, and they just wanted her to do enough to win. So she's the one to beat, and I wish I could be more creative. But if she runs her very best race, she's going to be tough in this race.
That's absolutely correct. And you spoke about being creative when trying to make a pick or anything like that. Sometimes it's just what makes sense. And I think in a race like this, it is Torpedo Anna. And you mentioned Awesome Result, who I'll scroll down and show here. That's the number 9 entrant, and really, in my opinion, the only threat up to Torpedo Anna, if there is one. Gonna be tough, but it's a horse that we haven't seen run in the States, so there is the unknown factor. And there is that, quote unquote puncher's chance. They got to run the race. So there's always the possibility that Awesome Result is, clearly she's talented being 7 for 7, but you run into a horse like Torpedo Anna, where if she runs her A race, everybody's running for second.
You would imagine so. I mean, with Idiomatic out of this race, a Dare Manor was one that I thought if she could run back to her Apple Blossom, she'd be very tough, even against Idiomatic and Torpedo Anna. That won't be the case, obviously. I watched Awesome Results replays, and my notes here read that she moves sort of like Royal Delta. She's sort of a lengthy, scopy filly. She's got the big, long stride, and when she gets into that cruising speed, she's pretty solid, and she doesn't need the lead. She can go to the front, but she doesn't need to be there. But I think they're going to be pretty aggressive here. I think her last race, I watched it. She was very just sort of doing what she needed to do. She won by 7, but her ears were pricked up the whole way, and the rider just sort of tapped her on the shoulder a couple times to keep her interested, but that was that. So there was a lot more left in the tank there. So I think with a field like this, where we've seen stronger distaffs, in all honesty, I think she stacks up in this race, and she probably is the most likely foe to beat Torpedo Anna if anybody doesn't here. I respect Raging Sea, but I think she's very beatable. So I'm sort of with you on both horses in there.
Yeah, I think Raging Sea maybe just a little too compromised by the pace. Jackson, what were your kind of thoughts and opinions on the distaff here?
Yeah, you guys kind of nailed it. It looks like a 2-horse race on paper. Raging Sea was very opportunistic last time when they just went that suicidal pace at Saratoga, and it took that, and it took the entire stretch just to barely get by Idiomatic. She's not getting that sit up in here, and it'd be tough for her to win this race. I'm looking at it as a 2-horse race. It's Awesome Result or it's Torpedo Anna.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to the Breeders' Cup Turf, we have the morning line favorite of Rebels Romance. However, drawn out in the 11 post, going the 3-turn distance of 1.5 miles at Del Mar. Matt, what were your kind of first thoughts when you saw how this field drew? Because it is a pretty deep and competitive field.
It is. I think Rebels Romance is the one to beat in this race for sure. Another race where I've probably seen stronger European presences. I think Rebels Romance is very good, but you look at some of the other Europeans, and as a whole, I think we've seen stronger contingents as a whole from the overseas horses. I do think Rebels Romance is the runner to beat. I don't love the post position, 11 of 13 all the way out there. Not a super quick run into the first turn like we'll see in the F&M Turf, but nonetheless is going to be parked outside. And I think he's the one to beat. His Prix von Europa was solid, very workmanlike, and did what he needed to do to win against a good field and a small field at that, but he was projected to win that day. He's a pro. I mean, this horse, you look at his recent form, he's done nothing wrong. The only loss he's had as of late came against Goliath, who's a next out Group 1 winner who'd be the favorite in this race. So I don't love the post. I'm going to try to beat him with another horse, but I think he's a must-use on tickets as well. I don't think he's one of these horses that's you're either all in or you don't use him at all. I think you sort of have to use him. He seems like the one to beat. He should run well. He's probably good enough to overcome his post. I mean, he's clearly the class of the race, but I don't think he's a lock either. So I'll look for somebody else.
Yeah, I definitely want to hear what horse you had in mind to try and beat this horse. I have one as well. And a fun stat about Rebels Romance, or I guess not fun stat, but a stat that you could play against is 6-year-old horses and older in the Breeders' Cup Turf are 0 for 55.
Wow.
So that is a stat. It's, maybe it's similar to that Kentucky Down stat where they're 0 for whatever. And, not many are the favorites because there's not many that are, holding that form at age 6. But I still think that deserves some, recognition. It's a hard enough race to win. And certainly at 6 years old, most horses are typically past their prime.
Well, I mean, we, especially here in America, we really gear them towards winning early, getting some grade 1 wins. And with the turf horses, it can be a little bit different. And in Europe, I think Charlie Appleby and Godolphin, they have certain horses that they'll put to the sidelines for stud, but this is one of these horses that he's solid. He's very, very good. But he's not I don't want to use the term superstar necessarily. A runner like Enable's probably better than Rebels Romance is, for example. But he's sort of like a talismanic type of horse, a horse that he's a solid horse. Is he beatable? Sure. But against this field, he's the one to beat. They've done a really good job campaigning him. I mean, it doesn't look like he's lost a step in his last couple of years. So in terms of longevity and just keeping him good, Charlie Appleby's done as good of a job as he can here.
Yeah, absolutely. If you don't, mind sharing with us, what was the horse that you were kind of looking towards maybe as one of your choices to beat Rebels Romance in here?
I picked Shahryar in this race. I think that's how you say it, Shahryar, the Japanese invader here. Yeah, I didn't love his last race. It was coming off a layoff. And I think in August, I'm sure they had him cranked up. So that was a little bit of a concern. He's a pretty inconsistent horse, and that's also a knock on him. He runs a good race. He runs a bad race. You don't really know what you're going to get from him. I thought his last race here in America, last year's Breeders' Cup Turf, was actually very good. He was a little bit keen behind horses, had a little bit of traffic issues. I don't think he would have won, but maybe he would have been a touch closer at the end. And he ran third behind Auguste Rodin and up to the mark. And both runners there, I think they're as good as Rebels Romance, or at least Auguste Rodin is. So I think all he has to do is run back to that race. This horse was second best to Rebels Romance 2 starts ago. But again, Rebels Romance draws a much far worse post than Shahryar. So I think this horse, he's 10-1. I figure give him a shot. This is a race that I'd use a few different horses. I wouldn't single a horse like this. I wouldn't single Rebels Romance either, but he is one that I think is interesting. But the key with him is he needs to run his best race, the Son of Deep Impact. If he does, he's got a shot, especially that 4-back effort in last year's turf. I think that race is very close to good enough to win a race like this. So he's got to come back with that. But if he does, he's got a shot. I think if Rebels Romance had a better post, and I know this horse has lost to Rebels Romance, and he's probably not as good as Rebels Romance, I'd probably use somebody else on top. But the price is right, at least on the morning line for right now. And I think his best race is actually very good. So worth a look, I think.
Absolutely worth a look. And I love the morning line of 10-1 here. I think it's a very deep and competitive field. And I think you should look for prices. And this horse is certainly a logical contender, has done some of his best running on the firmer ground. And that's what you're getting out at Del Mar, because, it never really is. It's never not firm when you're out here. A horse that I turned to was just to his outside in Luxembourg, trained by Aidan O'Brien, and top jockey Ryan Moore takes the booking here. This is a horse that obviously they're pretty high on. They're shipping over. He's been, pretty strongly campaigned, but gets in here in pretty good order. And I mean, I know he's coming off 2, 6th place finishes where maybe he wasn't the most impressive, but that last time out, he lost to Economics, who's a good horse. And then second was Auguste Rodin, and then 2 back, a horse where Rebels Romance was also in there. And you mentioned Goliath, who won a Group 1 the next time out. So I think 12-1 on this horse might just be a little too high, just because you're going a mile and a half. You get top European connections with Ryan Moore and Aidan O'Brien, with, of course, Mr. and Mrs. John Bernier as the owners here. So they come over to win, and I think this horse on his best day is certainly capable. So this is one of the ones I'm turning to in here.
Yeah, the thing about him is he likes to be close to the pace in Cabo Spirits in this race. So I actually think that the pace is going to be pretty decent for a 1.5 miles. The turf racing here, obviously, we're a little more speedy just in general, as a general rule with American racing. But this horse here, I think, is going to be close. And keep this in mind, this horse finished just 2 lengths behind Economics last time out. And Economics finished 2 lengths ahead in his start prior to a 4-1 morning line in this race. Jarabet, a French runner. I don't know if that's how you say it. Luckily, I'm not on the clock calling races, so I guess it doesn't matter. But so if you like that runner, I think you at least have to take a look at Luxembourg. And I actually went to a morning training today at Del Mar, and Luxembourg is a really good-looking horse. He is a stocky, just like a linebacker, which is interesting that he's a 1.5 mile horse, but he is a beautiful specimen.
That's great insight. I'm going to be up there tomorrow to watch the European Japanese horses gallop, watch all the works going on. So I'm excited to get up there and see. Jackson, I'll turn to you real quick before we move on to our next race. Did you have any thoughts on the Breeders' Cup Turf? You're muted, sir.
There we go. I'm in complete agreement with Matt on Shahryar. I mean, he ran huge last year, and just me personally, I think Up to the Mark and Auguste Rodin would be pretty big favorites in here over Rebels Romance. You already mentioned he's going to be on the outs, or Rebels Romance drew away on the outside. And you look at his past performances, he was really bad at his prep race last year. He was beating like 20 lengths, and he still ran really well in the Breeders' Cup. He ran much better in his prep race this year. I think he was still 5th, but he's only beaten 3 or 4 lengths. So he's coming into it in much better form than he was last year. So he drew inside again. If you can get that same trip where he's, second right behind the speed, maybe 5th or 3rd or 4th, something like that, and just save all the ground. I mean, I don't see why he can't be right there at the finish.
Absolutely, yeah. Shahryar is definitely primed for a good effort, and he's certainly going to show up for the Japanese contingent, who shipped over a total of 19 horses. I forget how many exactly got in, but it's pretty close to that number. As they have a lot of runners this year, which is awesome to see. Moving on to the Breeders' Cup Classic, which is going to be the next one that we talk about. The morning line favorite is a horse that has never even tried dirt before, but is definitely the most talented in the field. You'd have to imagine if this horse is in the Breeders' Cup Turf, we're looking at a minimum of like 6 to 5 on the morning line. So we're going 5 to 2, going 1.25 miles. And of course, the horse I'm talking about is City of Troy for Aidan O'Brien, who cannot speak with high enough praise in regards to this horse. Matt, what were your kind of thoughts looking at this classic field, as we drew a field of 14, which is incredible?
This is a wild race, as is the dirt mile, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But
yes, we will.
I wish that Aidan O'Brien, I should rephrase that. If I am thinking totally different than Aidan O'Brien about his own horse, that could be a problem. If I'm betting this race, I'm not using this horse at all. I think he's a turf horse. I think he's got that Galileo underneath. He just runs like a turf horse to me. Maybe I'm 100% wrong here. Maybe he wins. If he beats me, he beats me. But if I'm wagering like a pick 5, for example, pick 4, I'm not using this horse anywhere. So I'm taking a stand on him and trying to beat him altogether. But as you talked about, this horse is uber talented. He's got dirt pedigree on the top side, being by Justify. So there's really not too much to knock with this horse. He's versatile. He went to the lead a couple starts ago and won. He stalked the pace and won last time. There's not too much to knock here, other than the fact that we don't know how effective he will be on the dirt. And that is the biggest question mark. And at those low odds of 5 to 2, I don't think that's a very good bet. He might be the best horse. He might be the right horse, but not for me at this point.
I completely agree with everything you said. I'm not going to take a short price on a horse doing something for the first time. I'll throw this example out there. If Flightline ran in the Breeders' Cup Turf last year or something, I would probably not use that horse as a solo top pick. I'd probably have to use that horse in some way, shape, or form. And I'll use City of Troy in some, backup tickets maybe. if I'm finding prices elsewhere, because I think it's still a deep and competitive enough field that I don't know that you'll get any horse less than 5-2 in this race. At least I would certainly hope not, with it being 14 deep. But he's certainly not someone I consider an A or a B in here. He's strictly going to be on my backup tickets, to be safe, I guess, so to speak, if I get some prices alive along the way. A horse that I really think is interesting in here is all the way to the far outside. Oh, too far outside. I am talking about Next. I've been a big fan of Next his entire racing career here, and I've been hoping all year to get him into the Classic. And now, he gets in, and he's drawn pretty perfect for what I would hope. You have the entire length of the stretch plus the dirt chute at Del Mar. So post position draw to me doesn't really matter if you're stuck out too wide, or if you're out far or against the rail, you have time to kind of maneuver and find your spot. So I think Next, he's cutting back to 1.25 miles, which is an interesting thing to say when you're talking about American horses. But in this, he's going to have the stamina. He has the ability to be close, and he's been close in marathon races going a lot farther. So I'm not sure, where that leaves him necessarily going into the first turn, but I think he's going to be finishing when some of the others might be, just trying to get home. Do you have any thoughts on Next or any other horses in the Classic here?
Well, I put Next in my top 4 here for sure. Wish he had a little bit of a better post. I was talking to my dad about this earlier today, but the good news is there's a long run to the first turn, and you can get over and establish pretty good position by the turn. So I'm not that concerned when you're breaking all the way out there, going 1.25 miles. He's going to have to move over a little bit to get a good spot, but I don't think that'll be a problem. I think in terms of talent, he's there. I mean, if he can run back to these marathon races, he's got a great chance in this race. He could very well beat this field. I think he's a must-use on tickets. I know there's a question mark as to how he's going to deal with a much faster pace scenario, but I think he's ready for it. I think he can sit off. He can stalk the pace. He doesn't need to be on the lead, and he's pretty push button. And if he can deal with that pace and have that same energy level and finish and run as hard as he can to the finish line, to me, he's a legit grade 1 horse and a legit top player in the handicap division. And I'm like you, I've wanted to see this horse go against the best that we have. And I was sort of feeling, well, maybe the turf might be a little bit better just because of the pace scenario, but they're opting to stay on the dirt. So I think he's in with a very live chance here. My top pick, I'm going with Arthur's Ride. I think he's very interesting. That last race, he had time between races. He could have still bounced possibly because he ran 2 really big races in a row. I'm a little concerned Highland Falls is going to try to do what he did last time to Arthur's Ride, which is press him and then run by him, or at the very least press him and cause problems. But I think freshening up here, there's really not much speed in this race other than maybe a Highland Falls to go out with this horse. Fierceness can go out there with him, but I don't necessarily think it's in his best interest either. I don't really think it's anybody's best interest to go out with this horse going 1.25 miles. We saw that 1.25 miles win 3 starts ago where he won for fun. It was against Allowance Company, but obviously he can get the distance. Again, that last race wasn't himself. Okay. But he's 15-1 on the morning line. And again, I don't know what he's going to go off at. I would be a little surprised if he was 15-1, to be honest. But if he's somewhere around there, then that's too good to pass up for me. And part of this, if you're a wagering person, if you're a bettor, you are trying to find the best possible value. And this horse has value. So I'm going deep in this race. I think Forever Young, he's the rail horse. I think that last race was a perfect prep for this. Very tactical type of horse. Made a real nice move last time out. He actually made this big sustained run. And I think that this horse is just a really, really nice horse for Mr. Yahagi, who has no shortage of success at Del Mar Breeders' Cup. So I am actually going 12-1, 14, and then we're going to the 13 drawn towards the outside here. And he is my 4th pick, Newgate. Newgate's second start off the break. I know Bob has him pretty ready first off the shelf, but I think the pace will be swift enough for him to run into. Adding blinkers, a little bit of a concern. He hasn't worn blinkers since he was younger. So changing that up for this big race here is a little bit of a head scratcher to me. Maybe they're hoping something goes on that maybe he can improve and they want to see improvement. But he also was looming up down the lane and then sort of hung with the other two. So maybe they think if they put the blinkers on, that'll help him focus. I'm not really sure, but he's another one, 21 on the morning line, worth a look. So the morning lines are the morning lines. You can't go off the morning lines because you might look at the board and they may just be bad lines. They may be totally different come race day. But these are prices that I'm paying attention to. These are horses that could be in the right form. And I think in a lot of Breeders' Cups, I've also learned it's not necessarily at times about just who's the best horse. A lot of times it's about getting the right trip, finding horses that seem to be peaking at the right time. They're gearing up for a really, really big effort. And I think he's one of those horses that I think he just makes a lot of sense in a race like this, where I thought he ran very well last time, really.
Absolutely. And I think I'm speaking just purely off speculation. This feels like it might be Newgate's kind of finale. He's a solid 4-year-old colt. He's danced all the dances, including overseas in the Dubai World Cup. And now, comes into the Classic, second off a layoff, stretching back out to the 1.25 miles where he has a win. And this might be, this could be it. So either way, Bob Baffert knows how to get him ready. The blinkers on angle was one that I couldn't quite look past. I just thought that was a little strange to do that in, what could be his last race. But regardless, he's a 4-year-old with, what is that? 11 starts, excuse me. And just to make that change again was a little strange to see. But your point on Arthur's Ride was one that I definitely agree with. I have this horse towards the top of my picks as well, just because 15-1 is obviously way too high. I think we'll get closer to 10. But even that presents really good value because a horse like this that is capable of running a 110 buyer, 111 buyer, at the distance is that puts him in the winner's circle, I think, if he runs back to that. And you mentioned it was against allowance horses in that race, but the way he trounced that field, I think, if he clearly has a world ability or a world's amount of talent. So on his best day, he comes in fresh. Bill Mott obviously knows how to train him with the best of them. So I like your picks. Forever Young, it was tough, just down on the rail. Sometimes has some issues breaking. So I think it's 6-1, and I think he might even go off lower than that because he seems like he has a lot of buzz to him, as he should, being 6 for 7 lifetime. For Yoshito Yahagi, who is, again, as you said, no stranger to the winner's circle at Del Mar come Breeders' Cup time. Jackson, what were your thoughts looking at the Classic here?
Yeah, we touched upon this race a little bit yesterday, and I still feel the same way. I don't think there's much speed at all, and I think there is going to be someone that we're not expecting, one of these come from behinders that just happens to break well. They find themselves in that 5th or 6th spot, much closer to lead, and whoever that horse is going to get the jump on everyone else, and they're probably the one that is going to win this thing. I haven't decided who that is yet. I think I've gone back and forth about 4 or 5 times the last 24 hours. Right now I'm on Arthur's Ride, and about 2 hours ago it was Next, and before that it was Newgate, and I'm all over the place. So I got 3 days to figure it out. I do think the pace is going to be a lot softer than people are anticipating, though, because outside of Arthur's Ride, there's really not a true speed ball in this race.
Yeah, and speed does go a long way. And I think Arthur's Ride, if he's alone on that lead, I think that's where he's most comfortable. I mean, that's kind of stating the obvious. And if he's able to cross and clear, we saw how aggressive Junior Alvarado was in the Whitney to just get across and get past the speed of, National Treasure and all the rest there. And he got out, he got comfortable, and he never looked back. Jackson, you mentioned a horse that's just going to kind of sit, maybe a little bit closer than people are picturing and could just kind of get the first jump. And something tells me it's this horse. I don't know what. I don't like this horse for any other reason other than I see Irad, and obviously he's, one of the best jockeys. Tappet Trice is capable of running a triple-digit buyer, and he's done so twice in his career. He's capable of sitting just a tad bit closer. He scares me a little bit. I haven't made my final opinion on him yet, but he is a horse that definitely could, kind of surprise if he just kind of sits that perfect trip and just kind of breaks and everything kind of goes his way. He's he's a grinder, but he's able to finish and he's able to see it out. He certainly knows how to find the winner's circle.
Yeah, I just felt like he's a little too slow. I mean, what's it going to take to win this? It's in the high 109, 108, 107, and his best is, I think, about 100. So he's going to need a clear best to get up there. But he's not impossible. This is a wide open race.
He ran in the Monmouth Cup, and that was his yearly debut, and won very impressive that day. And he's a bit of an odd horse because I remember when I was calling the race, I remember at the quarter pole he was moving up, and I said, this horse is going to win easy. I could see it at the quarter pole and the binoculars, and he really showed a big kick that day, which we hadn't seen from him. He's always been sort of a grinder type. Mm-hmm. But ever since that race, he hasn't shown that kick again, and I just don't know why. And I figured, hey, maybe this horse is just going to be a better 4-year-old after the Monmouth Cup, and he beat Highland Falls that day, who, of course, came back to beat my top pick, Arthur's Ride. So, I mean, he's not impossible, but it's just we haven't seen that breakout performance that we've all been sort of hoping that he'd have. And the Monmouth Cup sort of gave us a little bit of a hint of, maybe this horse is figuring it out now, like everybody's been thinking. And then he went back to his sort of grinding running style. And by the way, we haven't talked about his stablemate Fierceness, who is just such a I mean, he's one I try to beat every time, and I would use him in spread in this race on like a pick 5 ticket. I'd use him, but if there's not a lot of pace in this race, that could aid him. So this is just a very, very good betting race.
It absolutely is. Yeah, a 14-horse field where there shouldn't be a horse under 5-2 in here. Fierceness second choice at 3-1. I'd have to think he drifts up a little bit from that. That just seems a little short with some of the other runners, but you never know. I mean, he's had 2 really strong races coming into this. I'm also a person who just tries to beat him every time he runs because for whatever reason, anytime he has any sort of adversity in his races, he just doesn't really run like the same horse. And in a 14-horse field, you're probably going to face some adversity along the way. The chances of you getting a perfect trip it's not very high. If this is a 7-horse field and Fierceness was in it, he drew, post 6 or 7, then that's one thing. And then he's probably a major threat, but you have speed to the outside with Arthur's Ride. You just never really know what's going to happen out of the gate. So I'm going to try and beat Fierceness for the most part, but I might be like you and maybe use him on a backup ticket just in case, Johnny V does one of those Hall of Fame rides that he's so accustomed to and gets that dream trip with Fierceness and just gets him home.
Yeah, and he had a strong gallop this morning, too, by the way. Very strong gallop I saw from him, had good energy. It was blown pretty hard when he came back. So fitness will not be a problem based on what I saw.
That's excellent insight there as he's shipped into Del Mar a couple days ago, I want to say. And that's good to see. He's getting his, works in over the track. As we move on to the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf here, your morning line favorite is one of my favorite horses in training, and I'm happy she's been around to age 7, and that is Warlike Goddess, trained by Bill Mott, exiting the Turf Classic where she lost by half a length going against the boys, comes back against the fillies and mares here. Matt, what were your kind of thoughts looking at this race, and did you like Warlike Goddess or did you go elsewhere?
Well, I went elsewhere with a top pick, and these things could change, of course. But
of course,
I respect the heck out of her. I mean, she is just a gamer. She goes out there and she does her thing, and I think going back in the Filly and Mare Turf is the right decision. They tried her against the males last year, didn't get the greatest trip, but wouldn't have won anyway. But this year, I would not say disappointing by any means, but there have been a couple times where she hasn't gotten the right scenario. She's been beat a few times this year. I'm not going to sit here and say that she's lost much, but she possibly has lost just a tad. She was clearly second best to Farbridge last time out against males in the Turf Classic. He got a bad trip that day and still won. He was the best horse. Yeah. And she is going to get a pace to run in here with Full Count Felicia in this race, who's a bit of a runoff. I think she will run well. I think she has a big chance to win. I would be very certain, very confident that she probably would hit the board at the very least here. I think she'll run well, but I ended up going with Cinderella's Dream on top, the 3-year-old filly here, giving up a lot of experience and age, but I loved her last 2 races, albeit against her own age group, albeit against fairly weaker. But what I really like from her is her kick. I mean, she showed a really nice kick. And I think with these races, especially in the Breeders' Cup, you need a kick to win. If you're a grinder and you're consistent, you don't always win races like these. You hit the board, you finish off underneath an exotics, you need a kick, and she has it. And I think if Charlie Appleby didn't think she could win this race, he wouldn't have entered her against Older here. So I like her. I think she's very, very good. And I also picked Full Count Felicia as a runner that's very intriguing off just a ridiculous race last time out. Ran off with the rider, going a mile and a quarter, opened up 14 and still won. It was a huge effort. She's gotten better every start since moving to the barn of Kevin Attard. Irad Ortiz is aboard for the first time. He rode a one time at Gulfstream last year in December and won on her. Going that fast like she did last time against this field, which is a little bit tougher. She hopefully does not do that again, or she's not going to be able to hold on, especially going another furlong against tougher. But she's getting better every race, and she's going to be clear on the lead. And if Irad can ration her speed, then I think she's in with a big shot here at 12-1. So those are my three I'm looking at here on top. And I also think Content is a little bit interesting. Number 7 for Aiden O'Brien. It's run against tougher. So to me, in a bizarre sort of way, this is to me is a little bit of a class drop for her. I think that, you know, she ran against some real tough runners in Europe and in against what I think is a little bit of an easier field in the Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. She's one that merits respect, but I don't think that she's the European to beat in here. I think Cinderella's Dream is.
That's great analysis, and I love the top pick of Cinderella's Dream, picking the 3-year-old against Older. As Content is also another 3-year-old, gets Frankie Dettori for the mount here. Comes off a couple, maybe questionable efforts, but then you look at the conditions of that turf course, and they're both listed as soft. And this filly's clearly done her best running on good to firm and good ground, so that has to give you a vote of confidence with Aiden O'Brien shipping over here. You know you're getting the firm ground at Del Mar, as we've mentioned now a couple of times. So yeah, Content might set up and might just love the going here. Content ran over in the U.S. last year in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Phillies Turf, and only lost by about a length and a half to Hard to Justify. You had Porta Fortuna in second, and she is running in I forget what race she's running in, but she's also running the mile. Thank you. She's running in the mile this year, and she's a force to be reckoned with. So I like the pick with Content. Full Count Felicia is definitely a horse you have to look out for just because of that speed and that runoff speed that we've seen. It can be dangerous if you let them get too far away. I listened on the HHH Racing channel. Howard Kravitz had on a guest named Davey Lane, who's a European punter. Love listening to that show every year. And he kind of maybe hinted that Ylang here for Aiden O'Brien could be speed of sorts. Hasn't shown a ton, but could kind of be in there to help kind of muddle the pace maybe a little bit. Although that being said, I don't know that many horses are going to be able to run with Full Count Felicia if, she kind of runs to her last couple races of just kind of running off the screen, more or less. My top pick as of right now in this race is Moira. I think that she's going to come in here in really good order. The post is a little wide going those 3 turns, but I'm hoping that she can kind of get some tactical position, kind of tuck in. I like the kick that she's shown. She's really come on well since being a really stellar 2-year-old. Now as a 5-year-old mare, has really run some of her best races as of late. Again, she was trying to close into Full Count Felicia, but that was a 5-horse field. It's kind of tough to come when you have a runoff leader like Full Count Felicia was. They just let her get too far away. So coming in here, I think that she could get a decent setup, and she hasn't run at Del Mar before, but she did well out at Santa Anita last year. So I think she's got a real shot.
She's a sentimental favorite of mine watching the fillies and mares because actually her big brother named Jungle Cry was a Golden Gate regular, and he was a stakes horse. I mean, he was no slouch by any means. Obviously, he wasn't a Breeders' Cup horse like she is, but one that I enjoy watching. And she's just one of those hard-trying, honest types. I mean, you talk about certain horses that are inconsistent. She is the opposite. She just runs hard every race and gives it her all. So we can expect nothing less of her in this affair.
Absolutely. Yeah, you made a great point there, and something we can certainly expect from the Breeders' Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile is an absolute headache. This race I don't even know. I have no opinions really yet. I mean, your morning line favorite is out on the number 9 for Domestic Product, trained by Chad Brown, owned by Claravich Stables, ridden by Flavian Pratton here. Obviously coming off a strong 106 buyer. Matt, what did you make of this race? And I know you wanted to touch on a horse who really got a pretty bad draw of things, all things considered.
Yeah, well, Domestic Product, he is trained by a man, Chad Brown, that I think Chad's real strong suit is managing horses and knowing where to spot them and how to campaign them. He is one of the better trainers in the world at doing that, in my opinion. I think his training program keeps horses fit, healthy, happy, and he puts them in the right spots. I don't think he does anything magical in terms of training except train like Bobby Frankel, who is a wizard, and then he puts him in the right spots and he knows what he's got with his horses. He's just an extremely talented manager of horses. So the fact that Chad Brown put this horse in a mile race at 2 turns rather than what may appear on page, even though a little bit farther distances, but this horse is really blossomed at 1 turn, that gives me a little more confidence that the 2-turn configuration won't be an issue for him. I called this horse 3 starts ago in the Pegasus, and he was second best to Tuscan Sky that day, a Todd Pletcher horse that did not do much damage in his next start, the Haskell. And he really showed a grinding running style in that Monmouth race, but he's come back to run 2 superb efforts. So I have no clue if this horse just randomly woke up, which can happen with 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds, him being a 3-year-old, or if those longer distance 1-turn races for him just are his thing. I don't really know the answer to that, but I'm a little bit more confident that he'll be okay at 2 turns. The fact that Chad Brown's confident enough to run him in this race rather than cutting him back to 6 furlongs, which I think there were plenty of people that thought he'd probably do. I like a horse in here a lot post time. I really like this horse in this race. Didn't beat much last time out, but won like a good thing. But keep in mind, this horse was a price disrespected in the Whitney and ran 3rd to Arthur's Ride, who, of course, I like in the Breeders' Cup Classic. He's a solid miler. There's a good amount of pace in here, and I think he's going to get a really good trip. I do not think he's necessarily the best horse in this race, but I think he's coming into this race with consistent form. He's 9 for 13 with 4 other in the money finishes. He never runs a bad race. Got a really good confidence booster last time. You look at his mile races, a bunch of them. In fact, all of them were at a 1-turn mile. But going a mile and an eighth, 2 turns in the Whitney, ran 3rd in a large field. That was good enough for me to know this horse can go 2 turns. And for a high percentage trainer in Brittany Russell, I think this horse is a very, very live horse in here and very dangerous.
I'm really happy you brought up post time because that's one of my top picks as well. In fact, I think I mentioned to Jackson before we went live, I am going to key this horse all over the place. 13 career races and never out of the try. I mean, I want to try and take advantage of that. And I think you're going to get another good price on post time. You know, ridden by Sheldon Russell, trained by Sheldon Russell, trained by Brittany Russell. And those aren't connections that you typically think of as like high profile. They're mainly, you know, up in that Maryland circuit for the most part. But they know Brittany Russell knows how to train. I'm really excited to bet this horse all over across the board because I think you should get a pretty good price. And this horse is going to give you his best effort. He's going to be there towards the finish, and he's pretty tactical. He can kind of sit wherever's needed, and he comes with that late run. And this race was just a headache overall, the handicap. And I'm still working through it. I'm still getting there, but between Domestic Product and post time, I feel semi-confident with those. Jackson, what were your kind of thoughts on this Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile?
It's brutal, right? And I think the biggest part is, you know, Del Mar limits these mile races to 10 horses year round. And in this race, we have 14 horses lined up in the gate, and there's so much speed, and it's a short run to the turn, and the break is going to be so important in this race. So I don't really want to take a short price on anyone in here. Domestic Product's definitely the one to beat. I think Saudi Crown on his best day is definitely one that you should be respecting too. It's tough to know how healthy he is right now. I know he missed a start at Churchill. I'm looking a little bit at Tumbarumba as a horse that might rebound. He's a big long shot, but he's going to be forward. He doesn't need a lead. He'll be right behind the speed, I think. And I thought he had excuses the last couple of starts. So that's a big long shot. I think you can maybe throw in there somewhere.
I definitely like that. Another hard trying horse, similar to Post Time, just to his outside, is Tumbarumba. Brian Lynch, it should be noted, scratched Tumbarumba out of the stakes at Keeneland this past weekend so that Tumbarumba could run in this spot. Drew into the field, gets a pretty decent post at number 7. Has the ability to come from a little bit off of it, which I think is good because I think the 1, 2, and 3 posts really have no place to go but to the front, and that being Saudi Crown, Tio St. Denis, and the number 3 Full Serrano, the Argentinian bred who ran last in the Pacific Classic and almost won that race, but just couldn't quite get there because super horse like Mixto got home that day. Last horse I want to mention, and Matt, thanks again so much for coming on. I think this is the horse you referenced towards the beginning of our show, Skippy Widestocking, drawn on number 14. Or Skippy Longstocking, I guess would be the appropriate name.
You could call him that though, based on where his post is. Skippy Widestocking. Yeah.
So yeah, Skippy Longstocking out here. Obviously a really talented horse, but I think the draw is just gonna compromise him a little bit too much.
It's a killer. I mean, this is the worst draw imaginable for this horse. You can make a little bit of a case if you've got a closer that can just tuck over and hopefully he's not caught too wide. Doesn't need the lead, obviously, but he doesn't like to be sitting 5-6 lengths behind. He likes to be there. So Irad Ortiz is going to have no choice but to send this horse out of the gate. Look, Jackson, you referenced it. It's hard to win from post 10 going a mile at Del Mar. So how can you sit there and say, well, from 14, it's going to be any easier? Because it's not. It's even worse. Out of all the horses in the entire Breeders' Cup this year, this horse got the worst possible draw. And look, if you're a bettor and you don't like this horse or you don't think he's going to win, you can't play him defensively with this post. You have to try to beat him. You could think he's a good horse. His Oaklawn handicap, sensational. On track, on TV. It was just an absolutely fantastic race from him. And that race beats this field. No doubt about it, he can duplicate that. But he's got a horrendous post. He's got a running style that suggests he needs to use a lot of energy just to make sure he gets a good position. And there are good horses in here. So this horse is a total play against with this absolutely horrendous post position. And I feel bad for the connections because you're hoping to get a good post. You're sort of going back and forth between the Breeders' Cup Classic or the Dirt Mile. You choose the Dirt Mile, and then this happens. I can't reiterate enough what a disaster this post position is for him. And if he wins, he deserves as many mints in the barn as he wants. That is going to be an
absolutely 100% agree. Yeah, that's just too wide. You have to try and beat him. And if he wins and he beats you and he proves best, good on him. That's a horse that okay. What are you going to do at that point? Matt, I can't thank you enough for taking the time out of your day and your, relaxing vacation to hop on with us, talk some horses, talk these big 5 races. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing you out there at Del Mar in the next couple of days as you, take some well-deserved time off before you get the winter and spring going at Oaklawn.
Yeah, looking forward to meeting you. It's going to be a great week at Del Mar. We'll meet up in person and hopefully pick some winners along the way. So thanks for having me on, guys. Right. It's been a lot of fun. And just talking about the Breeders' Cup, we're getting stoked for it.
Absolutely. Thanks again so much, Matt. Take care, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks,
All Matt. Right, guys. Have a good day.
You too. All right. That was Matt Dinerman. Another, big thanks to him for taking the time out of his busy schedule and just trying to relax as we, get prepared for Breeders' Cup. We're going to have our next guest, Matt Bernier, joining us in just a couple of minutes. So excited for that. Jackson, what were your kind of thoughts on those 5 races we just touched on? It is a difficult sequence.
Yeah. Matt and I agreed on a lot more than I thought we were. I mean, just in general, because, there's 14 horses in every race and we were kind of on the same page on a few of those. So I like that. I feel like it's a good sign. He watches a lot of races, obviously. He knows what he's talking about. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, yeah, I agree. I'm happy people are kind of warming up to the idea of next in the Classic if they haven't, been big fans already, because I love that horse. I'm so excited to watch him run. I think he's really going to, have a good showing for himself, and I think it's going to be special. But either way, this Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile is giving me just fits to handicap because it is damn near impossible to try and pin down what's going to happen. And I feel like somehow, some way, Skippy Longstocking might win. But there's no better person to join us right now as we talk about these next 5 races and talk about what a headache this Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile is, along with the other 4 big races. Then FanDuel TV rep and NBC Sports analyst, that is Matt Bernier. Matt, how are you doing?
Fellas, you would think by now that I've got audio and camera stuff straightened out. I apologize for the late arrival. I sit down. I was talking with Howard last night. Everything worked perfectly, and now nothing works. So I'm sorry for the late arrival.
That is all good. We were running a couple minutes behind anyway, so that works out perfectly. Happy you were able to, take the time out of your busy schedule to join us.
No, of course. I mean, look, Breeders' Cup week is always an exciting week. It's always a busy week. It's the same as Derby week, where it's over in the blink of an eye because you go from 0 to 100 the entire way through. But in reality, you wouldn't want it any other way. So, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and hopefully we can smoke some stuff out here.
Absolutely. Let's start with maybe not the most difficult race in the sequence, but certainly the one I think a lot of people are looking forward to just because of the name in there, and that of course is the Breeders' Cup Distaff with Torpedo Anna. What were your thoughts here? Are you going with the Grizzly, or are you maybe going to try and look elsewhere?
I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about the race. Obviously, when you take Idiomatic out of it, it loses a little bit of its luster. She's the likeliest winner by far. And I think the most likely scenario is very simple. She breaks, she goes right to the front, she wires the field, she wins by margin. I'm not in a rush to bet her at 3 to 5 doing that sort of thing. But then again, I think she probably just does that and she caps off a really nice 3-year-old campaign, one that might be the best since Rachel Alexandra for a 3-year-old. Maybe it's right up there with Songbird, horses like that. If I were gonna take a shot against her, I would do so with the Japanese filly coming in awesome results. And I think a lot of people are probably looking at the race the same way. That's, I would assume, going to be the most hammered exacta probable in the Breeders' Cup betting challenge and just the Breeders' Cup in general. But I think she's a serious talent. I think Torpedo Anna needs to run her A game, put it that way. If she doesn't show up with her best, I think this filly is capable of beating her. So I guess I'll go a tepid call to the 9. Awesome result, but I acknowledge that the race goes through Torpedo Anna.
Absolutely, yeah. But you brought up a great point. Torpedo certainly needs her A effort because I think awesome results is no joke. And she's going to come with her A effort. We know we've seen the Japanese trainers time and again out on the West Coast for the Breeders' Cup the past few years. They ship out and they ship out with a purpose. And this year is certainly no exception with them sending a total of 19 over. And it seems like 14 of them you can make a legitimate case for. Stealing one, whether that's on the front end, off the pace, or just having loads of talent and ability. So it's certainly going to be a contentious race to watch. And between Awesome Result and Torpedo, I think it's going to be a really cool kind of 2-horse race to start off. Kind of that late sequence on Saturday.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think again, it's one of those things, right, where we would have all loved to have seen the showdown between her and Idiomatic, similar to, I keep making the comparison to the Beholder Songbird distaff that we saw a number of years ago. But it's unfair. But now this suddenly becomes an instance where if Torpedo Anna had lost to Idiomatic, she probably doesn't lose anything as far as the public's perception of her is concerned because she lost to a champion. If she loses now, I think probably she is arguably the loser and the beneficiary of Idiomatic being withdrawn, because now, I don't think anybody would give her a pass if she doesn't show up and get the job done on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. She is now expected to win probably by open lengths if you ask most people. And then versus Idiomatic, you'd have a legitimate excuse losing to a champion like she was. I want to touch on the Breeders' Cup filly and mare turf, the Breeders' Cup turf next. Your morning line favorite, drawn at number 11, that's Rebels Romance, a 6-year-old. I brought up the stat with Matt Dinerman just a little bit ago, but 6-year-olds in the Breeders' Cup turf are 0 for 55 coming in. I'm not sure if that's something you take into account, because there's that Kentucky Downs stat that everybody always throws out, and stats can tell whatever story you want them to tell at the end of the day, but I think mainly the one negative I take away from this is just the outside post position, going 3 turns on the Del Mar turf. How did you see this race? Because I think it's right for a price.
Yeah, I had mentioned it to Howard Kravitz in the past, and I brought it up a little bit last night during their draw show. The idea that for me, the post draw really only affected. I shouldn't. Let me rephrase that. I only cared about the post draw for 3 races, and it was the turf sprint, the Philly and Mare Turf, and this race, the turf, because of what you just brought up. The idea that, outside, not only are you outside going 3 turns, but more so with the Philly and Mare, which we'll talk about, that's a quick run into that far turn for the first of 3 goes. So you're almost guaranteed to be carrying ground unless you break out of there like a jackrabbit and you can clear off. And that's probably not a recipe for success going, 11 furlongs for the Phillies and Mares, and then in this case, 12 here. I'm with you guys. I don't particularly love Rebel's Romance. I never have. I think he's a fine horse. I don't think he's a superstar. But then again, to be fair, I thought Yabir was very common, and he won this race at Del Mar a few years ago.
Mhm.
So, Charlie Appleby has won with lesser competition or lesser company in the past. Wouldn't stun me, but at the same time, I'm not in a rush to bet him. The most appealing horse to me in the race, and I don't know about the distance, but JRB, I assume I'm pronouncing that correctly, coming in for Brian
Yes.
Meehan. This is a conditioner that he only sends horses here when they have a big chance. And he's been quoted saying this is one of the better horses he's ever trained. The distance is the wild card. I'd be lying if I said I was super confident that 12 is going to hit him between the eyes. I liked how he ran over at Longchamp in the most recent start. That was over heavier ground than what he's going to deal with, obviously, on Saturday. Um, and I like the idea of a 3-year-old stepping up. I'm not. I think there's something too about the Breeders' Cup. This is anecdotal for me these days, but the end of a long taxing campaign for some of these horses. I know he has run a number of times this year. I believe it's 6, 5 maybe, but I don't get the impression that you've really, I don't want to say scratched the surface with him, but I think there's a lot more there than what we've seen just yet. And maybe when you factor in all the other horses in this race that I don't particularly love, maybe this is a spot where you can take a shot with a 3-year-old that's kind of on the come up. And JRB, am I in love with 4-1? No, but I like him. I think the tape would suggest that he's a pretty good horse, and I want to back him in the form of some of these races that he comes out of is holding up very well.
Absolutely. Yeah. JRB definitely holding his form and holding his own against some really stellar company. That, two back at the pre, and I'm not going to try and pronounce the rest, but lost to Economics. And then JRB comes right back out and wins. He had a really good showing over that firm turf in the race I just mentioned, losing to Economics. So, he's going to appreciate the ground. You have to love the 5-post here. He's going to be able to kind of save ground. He is more of a forwardly placed horse, but I think he has a pretty good turn of foot. And he should be able to, hopefully be able to save enough ground where he's able to hold off those closers because it's going to be a tale of trips, as it always is in these marathon races. It's who can save the most ground. And then you mentioned Yabir earlier, where he wasn't the best horse by any means, on paper, but he just ran the best race. And I was there in 2021, and I can't visually, Jackson can attest to that, I can't tell a horse from a donkey as they walk past me, but Yabir came out onto the track, and he was flexing like he was Hulk Hogan. And so I just ran to the window. I was like, yeah, if a horse ever looks that good, I guess I'll bet it. And sure enough, he ended up winning. So that's my one and only, pick on looks that turned out anywhere beneficial. But that was a bit of a tangent there. But JRB should set up nice. And I have heard the trainer's sentiments on this horse as well. And he's very high on it. So that should get him a far ways.
I mean, a two-time trainer of a turf winner in the past, and again, I feel like there is something to be said about when the Euros come over. We always focus on the O'Briens and the Applebys of the world, and even the John and Thady Gosdens. But I think when a European conditioner knows what it takes to win here, and he specifically points to a race or a specific horse to a race, I think that I'm not telling you he's tipping his hand. Obviously, he's 4-1 on the line, but I would say I'd be more surprised if he didn't run than if he won the race. Put it that way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. He knows how to, point his horses to this spot. Another kind of contingent that knows how to get their horses here in a position to win is going to be the trainer and partnership of the number 3 Shariar in this race, who ran had a great effort last year in the Breeders' Cup Turf, comes right back. Obviously last year lost to Auguste Rodin, and the horse who was probably best in that race up to the mark. It took a absolutely phenomenal ride from Ryan Moore for Auguste Rodin to win that one. I'm happy because that was my single on the day. But Shariar here, I thought would be a lot closer to favoritism. Maybe not favored, but at least 5 or 6 to 1 in this spot. I think this horse is incredibly talented. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm very interested to see how the tote shakes out on Saturday because I agree with you. I think there are some morning lines. The morning line is the most thankless job that there is in horse racing. So I'm not trying to throw shade at anyone, but it's races like this, especially with them being as deep as they are. I think it's very difficult to get a true read on that. So you look at what some of the overseas prices are. I don't want to say I'd be stunned if you got 10 to 1, but I mean this is a horse that I think he's probably closer to 6 would be my guess. And I know then you need some other horses to float around a little bit, but I mean, even Luxembourg, is he really going to be 12s? Maybe. I don't know. It's that kind of race. I think it boils down to how heavily they bet Rebels Romance. And I don't know how you guys feel about Far Bridge, but I've chased him way too many times. The idea of betting him at 6 to 1 in the Breeders' Cup Turf is just not appealing at all. He's a nice horse. Again, I bet him in the Turf Classic at Churchill this year. Didn't think he ran horribly. He didn't run well. I bet him in the Manhattan at 18s. Finished third, ran okay, and then I got off. And he's ripped off a couple of grade ones since then. So go figure. But I don't know. I think this is a difficult race to get a read on, and a long-winded way for me to answer your question. I think Shahryar fits in here very well. I mean, he finished a good third to 2 horses that in this race, what would they be? Probably 7 to 5, 8 to 5.
Yeah.
So in that case, I wouldn't talk you off a horse like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with you, Matt. I've been all over Farbridge for 2.5 years now, and I finally jumped off his last 2 starts, and he looks like a new animal, and it's frustrating.
Yeah, and the thing too, especially, and I'm sure you guys have done this as well. You find a horse early on that you're like, you know what, they're pretty good, and for whatever reason, it doesn't fully pan out, and you keep going back and you keep getting beat, and finally, I think anybody that's a rational gambler or handicapper finally can kind of throw their hands up and say, well, I was wrong. He's clearly not what I thought he was. And then the minute you do that, bang, bang.
Yeah, and now he's 6 to 1 in the Breeders' Cup Turf. So
Right, exactly. I do wonder if that number floats a little bit. I'd be surprised if he's 6s, but yeah, it's crazy to see how from the beginning of the year to where he was to where he is now.
Right. It truly is. And yeah, I never really loved this horse, and he makes me sick because he cost me big time in that Sword Dancer. So I don't see him being 6 to 1. I think this field's just too deep and competitive, and I don't know that his body of work stacks up because he's faced, I think the fields were maybe a little too short or a little too small in those last 2 races where he rattled off the grade ones, and you have horses coming in off of 10, 14 horse fields, and they've still worked out a good trip.
It's a good point that you bring up too. I mean, you got a couple of grade ones. Nobody can take those G1s off your resume. I mean, you beat a total of 7 horses, 10 horses. I mean, you didn't run in. It was half the field in the in the turf. So, and I like Silver Knot, but I mean, he's clearly not Breeders' Cup caliber at this point in his career anyway. So, I think that's a good point that you bring up as well. One thing to win the grade ones, another thing to do it against 13 other horses.
Exactly. And there almost needs to be, a step up for these, not step up, but a different classification for these Breeders' Cup races, because they're truly like a grade 1 of grade ones. They're the world championships for a reason. They're these deep and competitive fields. And a horse that I'm really excited that I'll get to see, and a horse that I heard you mention yesterday that you liked. And I'm talking about the Breeders' Cup Classic now. And that is the farthest to the outside. That is number 14. That is next. In the Classic. I'm happy, I'm not the only one that seems to love this horse.
No, and I think for me, it just kind of, guys, boils down to the idea that if you go through and you take all the main contenders in this race, there are legitimate questions for basically everyone. City of Troy, the obvious. I have no idea if he's going to handle the dirt. I saw him galloping out there earlier today with Aiden's Army. He looked fine, but I mean, when race day comes, when race conditions present themselves, I have no idea if he's going to kick on at 5 to 2 or somewhere thereabouts. Fierceness, I still think his best race wins, but I've been burned by him before. I don't know if you're going to get his best, and maybe Saratoga was showing that he's developed into that kind of mature, a fully developed 3-year-old at this point, and he's finally kind of kicked that habit, but. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't having a little bit of PTSD with that. And then, you think of horses like, I don't know, Sierra Leone. if you like Sierra Leone, don't you kind of have to like Next? Because
You do.
based on pace figures, they're probably going to be in relatively similar positions. And maybe if you want to say Sierra Leone is still on the ascension and you got another forward move in you, I suppose. But I just look at Next and think, all right, the distance isn't an issue for him. I know a lot of people are questioning if it's too sharp. Maybe it is, but put it this way, it's the opposite of some of these other horses where you're wondering, boy, that final furlong or that final quarter. It's not going to be the case with him. He's probably just getting his engine cooking.
Mhm.
If you want to argue that he's going to be too far off the pace and it's going to take him out of his element, yeah, maybe. I mean, I think that's a valid concern. But for a horse that has ripped off 7 consecutive triple-digit buyers, he's won all over the place. So I don't think Delmar should be an issue. And I just like the way that he moves. He's. I'm not telling you that if Machado pushes the button, all of a sudden he's going to go off and win by 10 again. But I don't know. I think he's that kind of horse that he's going to give you what he's got. And I see all these final quarters and 24 and a piece, final eighth going a mile and 3/8 and 11 and 4. I know the pace early on is a lot slower, but I think I don't think he's impossible. I appreciate that Doug Cowens is going to give him an opportunity. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. This will probably be his last race of the year anyway. You put him away, you bring him back next year as a 7-year-old. He's a gelding as long as he's happy, which it seems like he's thriving right now. I'll take my chances, and I don't think you get 8. I think you go probably closer to 12 or 15.
I'm definitely in your definitely on your side on that one. I think you get better odds than what we see on the morning line. The morning line definitely shows respect to his body of work, and I'm in your party of thinking, and that's the cutback. I don't know if it's too sharp, but he's going to be finishing when all the others are, trying to get there. He's just going to be getting going, and it's just a matter of if he can get going quick enough to catch all the ones that are going to be ahead of him.
Yeah, and I wonder too a little bit about how the race unfolds, about how hard do they go early on, because I almost wonder, there are a number of folks that I've spoken with throughout the year whenever I've talked about the idea of Next in the Classic, and I'm like, why the hell not? Like, he hasn't done anything wrong. And they go, he's going to get run off his feet. He's going to get run off his feet. That may well be the case, but I'm starting to almost talk myself into the idea that if they go 45 and 4, that's probably a good thing for him because everybody else in front of him is going to be completely cooked.
Yeah.
And we know he's just going to be finding his best stride when they hit the half-mile pole, if not the quarter pole.
Absolutely. Yeah. The only kind of negative thought would be maybe if he somehow gets discouraged being that far off of it, if they go that fast. But I mean, again, if he runs his race, he powers home. He has a turn of foot on dirt that you don't typically see. And he's going to be flying when all the others are just trying to get there.
I think the other thing too about a horse like this, I'm trying to draw up the reasons, we bring up with the shorter prices why they're not great bets, right? Sure, if you want to talk about the distance possibly being the problem with Next, I'm open to that being an issue. The difference is I'm getting 6 to 7 times the price on him than many folks are on a Fierceness or a City of Troy. And that's a gamble I'm willing to make.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I think a horse that's I refuse to play Fierceness. I can't. Certainly not at 3-1. He seems to love Saratoga. He's won elsewhere. He won at Santa Anita and he won at Gulfstream Park. But he just seems to not handle adversity too well. So that's enough for me to get off of him. Sierra Leone, obviously very talented, training up to this from the Travers, I think is an interesting one. As well, might be just flying late, maybe a good kind of underneath key horse, as he's always a grinder and just kind of makes up the ground as everybody else kind of falls apart. A horse that I do think is dangerous is Arthur's Ride, coming in, going to be fresh in this spot, should get out to the lead. You got to wonder what a horse like Highland Falls does to his inside. Forever Young can't be too slow out of there, breaking from the rail. There's some others inside that might show a bit of speed, but I think if Arthur's Ride and Junior Alvarado are as aggressive as they were in the Whitney, to just kind of cross and clear and just get out there, that's going to put Arthur's Ride in the most dangerous position. And we might have gray horses going 1-2 coming down to the finish.
And I wonder too, I'm curious what you guys think. If let's say you're someone that you like Fierceness, and let's just assume the morning line price is what you're going to get. Let's say 3-1 for a horse that, yes, he's a little more tactical, I think, than Arthur's Ride. Arthur's Ride seems like he's kind of a go to the front and let's just kind of spread eagle the field. If you like Fierceness at 3s, but we've opened ourselves up to the idea that You don't know if he's going to show up or not. You can say something similar with Arthur's Ride. I don't know what happened in the Jockey Club. I know Bill Mott mentioned the quick turnaround, but to be fair, what did he have between the allowance race and the Whitney? He had, I guess, 2 months. So maybe that is the difference, and maybe he just kind of bounced a little bit there. But if I'm going to sit here and say fierceness, the concern is I don't know if he's going to show up. You can say that about Arthur's Ride, but again, it goes back to price. If I'm going to get 5x the number, I'd much rather gamble on Arthur's Ride than I would fierceness.
Absolutely. It's a game of value, and I completely agree. And this is a race where I'm not taking anything under 5-1 because I don't think any horse really deserves to be in a 14 horse field where there's so many competing running styles. You really don't know. There's no standout. Like, yes, City of Troy, probably based on raw ability, is the most talented, but he's never stepped foot on dirt in the afternoon. So what do you think? Why are you taking why would you take a short price on a horse doing something like that for the first time on the biggest stage?
Yeah, I think there is, and it sounds like you guys are much more in line with me. The idea that you got to separate the ego from the actual game itself, and the game is making money. It's not necessarily about being right. We all like to be right. Don't get me wrong, but if you're trying to have success long term, maybe your pick in air quotes is City of Troy, but if he's 5-2 and you think he should be 5-1, then you can't bet him at that kind of situation. You know what I mean? I'm saying the other way around. If you think he should be 5-1 and he's 5-2, you can't
Yes.
possibly make a play on him like that. So I think in the Breeders' Cup, as fabulous as the event is, I think there is so much ego involved in making the pick ahead of time. And to your point, the idea that I'm with you. I don't think anybody in this field should be, 5-1 implies 17-ish% chance of winning. I think it's about right. I mean, I think there are so many questions in this field that I'm not in a rush to bet any of these short numbers. So and I have a question for you all. The idea of Forever Young, I loved the return effort at the beginning of October. I thought he was really good that day. He was much closer to the front end than obviously in the Kentucky Derby, but even in some of the other races. But I'm not one to get totally caught up in workouts and this, that, and the other. I think it's more noteworthy when they work like crap this time of year as opposed to jump off the page. But I tweeted it before I came on with you guys. Dermot Sotagake's work was lights out. Like, he looks like he's coming into this thing sitting on tilt. And I know the blinkers are going on, and maybe he ends up being a de facto pacemaker in this race. I know that's not the intention, but I don't know, man. If you're telling me that Forever Young is going to be in that 5 or 6-1 range, and if you believe Derma is going to be 20s, I mean, give me Derma Sotagake based on that work this morning. He looked fantastic.
Absolutely, he did. Yeah, I don't think I can take that short of a price on Forever Young in this spot. And Jackson, I'll turn it over to you here in a second to talk about these Japanese contenders because there's three of them with Derma, Ushba, and Forever Young. But yeah, that work by Derma Sotagake was lights out for sure. Obviously, a hard trying horse. You get the blinkers on, which is a bit of an interesting move, but he ran really, really well in the Classic here last year. And then obviously that Derby effort was so-so, but you get the Classic try here. You get a similar kind of dirt course as Santa Anita with Del Mar. It's just a bit of a shorter stretch, so maybe this is just going to kind of get him into the race a little bit more, have him show a little bit more forward ability, and I think that'd be dangerous in a race that doesn't, outside of Arthur's Ride, doesn't really have any need the lead types, so to speak. Jackson, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, Derma's an interesting horse. I actually loved him in the Derby last year. He was my pick, and he didn't break well. He had no chance, and I actually thought he ran okay. Then they came back in the Classic last year, and he said no. I said, you know what? I'm going to pick him again, and he ran really good. He was only 3 lengths off of that. It was a really fast pace. He held on the whole way. He got second. He was only beating a length, and he did not have a prep last year. He did that off of an 8-month layoff. This year he does have a prep. I know he didn't run great, but I don't think they cared at all about that race. It was just a means to an end. That the end goal is this race. You see the blinkers are going on. You just mentioned that, he can be more forward than he has been in his overseas race. And we keep talking about, I don't think there's a lot of speed in here. So if maybe he's the one that finds himself much closer than anticipated. And he's just right behind the pace. That's not as fast as a lot of people are expecting. So that would be my case for him. And I'm not going to fault anyone for taking 20-1 on him.
Absolutely, yeah. That is a dream price if you get anywhere close to 20-1 on a horse like that finished second in this race last year. That's just much too high for my liking.
And also, I don't need Forever Young anywhere. I don't think he's that great. I mean, I don't think the Derby was that great in general. And if I'm not a Sierra Leone fan, I don't know why I'm going to be a Forever Young fan when he's got gait issues too from the rail. I think he's got too much to do.
That's certainly very fair analysis. Moving on to the Breeders' Cup Breeders' Cup Filly and Mare Turf. Not the juvenile. My mind is scrambled. Warlike Goddess, certainly no juvenile. 7-year-old mare here. Morning line favorite at 5-2 for Bill Mott. One of my favorite horses in training. Not sure 5-2 is the price that I want on her, and I don't think that she's going to be my top pick here come race day. But what were your thoughts on this race as we have another deep and competitive field going 3 turns?
Yeah, I'm still not fully locked into this race. I think this is, to me, one of the more competitive Breeders' Cup races of the weekend. I think you can make a case for many runners in here. Is the 4th time the charm for Warlike Goddess? I don't really think so. If I was just not disparaging Farbridge, but if you got beat by Farbridge and you had a good setup, I think you're taking on better horses this time around. I don't know that I need her as the favorite. It'd be a great story if she were to win, because she's everything that you want to see in a racehorse, right? She shows up. The connections aren't in a rush to retire her, and I know you typically see that more with fillies and mares than you do with the boys. But I don't love her particularly in a spot like this. Didia, I have to be honest. I'm kind of worried that the form has gone sideways. I'm not entirely sure what happened here in September, but she never really ran. And I know she got the final 8th and 11-3, and it looks like you've got a proper kick in there. But Hang the Moon completely blew her doors off, and I know Hang the Moon came right back and did that again out at Santa Anita. So maybe she's just a filly that's coming into her own here. But Didia, I'm not completely convinced that she's as good as she was when she was winning, the New York and the Pegasus. Then you've got the overseas runners. Content, I don't know. So I was working in the morning during the Yorkshire Oaks, and I liked You Got to Me, and just she wasn't as good as Content that day. And I don't know what the story is with the last 2 starts. If it's simply the ground, the distance shouldn't be the thing that gets her beat. But she's struggled. She's another one. I don't want to say she's fierceness like, but she has times where she just doesn't show up, and I don't have an excuse for it. So again, as a shortage price in here, I'm not in a rush to bet her. The horse that I'm most interested in, I do think Kevin Attard's horses, excuse me, are interesting. Full Count Felicia, there's no speed in this race. Maybe she's not good enough, but I could see her going out there and winging it for a little while. And Moira is still, I think, a bit underappreciated for what she is. I mean, everybody thought it was cool when she was beating the boys in the Queen's Plate. Now it's the King's Plate, but she's gotten much better as she's gotten older. I think she's a legitimate filly mare in here. Uh, I bet Soprano in the QE2. And the question was the distance, because they maintained her at sort of that mile and even shorter over in Europe. And I actually thought she ran really well in the QE2. She just got her doors blown off by a horse that, I respect why Cherie DeVoe and company are not running. She feels pretty back, but she would be the favorite probably in this race. I don't think she'd want to go this far. And in the mile, I think she'd have a real chance. I mean, if you like some of the other runners in there, if you like Porta Fortuna, I mean, Soprano was only a length and change behind her. She got her face ripped off by She Feels Pretty. I guess long-winded way of me saying, I don't know. Can she get a mile and 3/8? I truly don't know. But 20-1 on Soprano, I think it's appealing to me a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah. That price on a horse with this, level of ability, first time in the U.S. Yeah, maybe didn't, run lights out by any means, but lost to a horse you mentioned that would have a real shot, or at least, from the looks of the morning line, would be less than 3-1, most likely. And I think second time in the U.S. can really have a horse, step forward, and they can progress a little bit, maybe. So I think Soprano is certainly a big shot to hit the board. It's just going to be a matter of if this horse can kind of get over and save some ground going into that first of 3 turns there, because that's ultimately, I think, what this race comes down to, is who can save the most amount of ground on the most amount of turns.
And I think for me, my hope anyway, and I don't know how much of her tape you guys have seen throughout the course of the year, but she can get a little bit keen early on. And I actually think that, I know that it sounds counterintuitive that she's got to go the longest she's ever gone, and being keen early, not usually something you want to see. But I don't know if you guys agree or disagree with me about the pace, right? I just don't think there's much in here. I don't know that that's a bad thing that she may be a little bit keen early. Where if Billy the Kid, Billy Luckman can use her and basically, I don't want to say flank full count Felicia, but if you're the one that takes it the chase, if you've got reservations about how good full count Felicia is, pop yourself right in second. Sit off of her and take your chance. And if the distance bites you, it bites you. But that to me is someone that will probably be betting Soprano. That would be my ideal kind of setup. Let full count Felicia go. And if you can use a little bit early on, knowing that she's probably going to be throwing her head about, try to get over and get into that kind of second or third position early.
Yeah, definitely. I love that analysis because, yeah, a horse keen, just maybe play to that going this longer distance. And that might put you in a good position, when they finally turn for home on the third of 3 turns. And that may be, but yeah, full count Felicia is a threat. You have Irad on board here. Again, the runoff type and the race at Woodbine, I think, was a little obviously it was bizarre and it's not something you see a whole lot. I don't think that's really, I don't want to say it's impossible at the Del Mar Turf, but it's pretty hard to go wire to wire there. Unless you're, supremely talented and you get really a dream setup. So I'm curious to see how all of that plays out because it's going to be an interestingly run race. I want to see maybe if Irad has full count Felicia forward, but maybe not run off forward, double digit lengths in front. But I think full count Felicia's best way to go, is to go 14 in front and just hope that everybody kind of assumes that she's going to come back to the field.
Her other top numbers, she did the exact same thing. It was like a year ago, and they never tried it again. And then they did it at Woodbine, and look at that, you beat Myra by 4 lengths. I mean, Myra's a pretty solid horse. She was not close.
You guys are a lot younger than I am, and I don't know if you remember when Tepin lost at Keeneland to Photo Call in the First Lady. So this would have been probably 16, maybe 15 or 16, and Photo Call just opened up on the field, opened up by I think like 10 down the backside, and Tepin just couldn't go and get her. And that was the last time Photo Call ever ran a race like that. I'm not saying that full count Felicia now is going to be a no hoper in a spot like this, but I wonder if it was a bit of like perfect timing, stars aligned, and you got your grade 1. Congratulations, take nothing away from you. But to think that it's going to happen again, going longer, going 3 turns against better horses. I'm not trying to tell you it's full of gold, but that would be my only concern is that maybe you caught lightning in a bottle last time and it's gonna be hard to do it again.
Yeah, definitely
a valid. It's a really tough race. I feel like. I mean, I don't think the Americans are that great, and honestly, the Euros that they brought over are just kind of they're okay. Nothing special. I don't think it's like last year when we had, I think it was in Spiral and Warm Heart where we knew those horses were legit. I don't think there's anyone like that in this year's race.
Not at all. It is a difficult race, but the race that I think is most difficult is the one we'll talk about next. And of course, I'm speaking about the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. This race is just a headache from top to bottom. You have the top 3 or first 3 in the post position who are, pretty
Ryan,
much need.
Let me ask Matt. Matt, are you playing in the BCBC this year? Because I know this is the last race on that sequence.
So I'm not allowed to play in that event anymore. Working for FanDuel, so that was one of the trade-offs I had to make. I'm also not. I'm not going to be anywhere this weekend because I'm having a baby, or I'm having a baby. My wife's having a baby, so
Congrats.
Thank you. So this is going to be a very odd Breeders' Cup for me, waiting to see if, or maybe I'm at the hospital for all I know. I don't know. But to answer your question, no BCBC for me. But this becomes a fascinating way to wrap it up, especially I know there's been consternation about the Classic not being run as the final race of the event, and we're just so accustomed. It's going to be the same thing now, but I think with the Classic, everybody knows those horses from top to bottom. I think this Dirt Mile, now things get a little bit wonky as far as like, okay, are you shooting your shot at the very end? Or are you going to try to, get your lead a little bit earlier and hope that it hangs on for the final race or 2?
Yeah, you definitely got to make some decisions early in the day, plan ahead, because it is this race is, there's 14 horses in it. And like you said, not everyone's that familiar with all these horses like you would be in the Classic where you're watching the Derby and the Preakness and all those big Saratoga races. So it's going to be really interesting to see, I think.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It's going to be a fun to watch the tournament standings going into the last race of the day, seeing where everybody is, seeing maybe how close they are, seeing how everybody, finishes up after that, because it's hard to get a strong opinion in a race where you have a horse like Domestic Product, who's your morning line favorite, and I think is the horse to beat comes from a little bit off the pace, going 2 turns for Chad Brown, who obviously thinks that this is the better spot rather than the 6 furlong dirt sprint. But, this horse hasn't been great going 2 turns, even though it's been a tad bit longer, just wasn't great at the Monmouth effort a few back. And then you have horses like a horse I really love, which is, let me throw it up here, which is Post Time from the number 8, really hard trying horse, never added the try in all 13 of his starts. Trained by Brittany Russell, ridden by Sheldon Russell, so pretty low-key connections out on the West Coast. Obviously, out in Maryland, they're pretty well-known. Come Pimlico weekend, you get these guys at 7-2 on a lot of their mounts, if not less than that. But Post Time runs his race every single time, whether that's 1 turn or 2 turns. Held his own at the Whitney, running second behind Arthur's Ride. That is, or third, behind Arthur's Ride, which is sensational. Should come right back here, gonna run his race, and a horse that I like to, just be there at the finish.
I agree, and I think if you like Post Time, you need to hope that the 12 sticks. And I don't know if you'll get 12, but I could see a high single digit kind of a number on a horse like this. And I would also say, if you like domestic product, you should probably bet Post Time, because they're not dissimilar. I think running style wise, going 2 turns, and I think to your point, I've always used this as an example, and it's easy for me to say this because we're never going to know going forward. But I'm a big believer in horses when they're allowed to do what they want to do. That's when you see them absolutely flourish. So I think of Frosted. A lot of people look at that Met Mile that he ran the 120 buyer in and say it was a one-off. Well, maybe it was, or maybe the 105 and the 103s and whatnot that he was earning going 2 turns were just simply because he was a really good horse, but he actually wanted to go 1 turn all along. And with domestic product, I mean, there were 2 races that just they stand out like a sore thumb, and they're both around 1 turn. The Jerkins and the Dwyer. Prior to that, he's good, but he's not great. And I think in a race like this, he should get a very good setup in theory based on the pace. But I'm with you. I don't think he's quite as good going 2 as he is 1. Having said that, I think Chad made the right call. I don't think 6 furlongs works for him at Del Mar. But yeah, I think if you like Post Time, obviously good play there. If you like domestic product, you should probably be betting Post Time, because you're going to get a better price for a horse that I think might be a little bit better suited for the 2 turns.
Yeah, absolutely. In complete agreement. I think domestic product is the horse to beat for sure. But I mean, you brought it up. Post Time has really competitive figures next to domestic product. A horse that I think is interesting that hasn't run a number, up to that caliber yet, but has shown success around 2 turns going the mile. 2 back in the Shared Belief, given it was only a 7-horse field. But I'm talking about Muth, who ran a pretty terrible race in the Cali Crown, but was wrapped up around the 6 furlong pole, came out of that to get 3 strong works in leading into this. So that's a vote of confidence, at least, seeing that he came out of that all right. He wasn't hurt or anything. Maybe he just came back too quick off that layoff into the California Crown. We know the ownership Zidane Racing, they love to be aggressive with their spots and take their chances in those big purses. So I certainly can't fault them there, and it seems like the horse came out in good order. So would it be that big of a surprise if we got Baffert in a mile race at Del Mar?
No, and I think you laid out the case very well for this horse, because I mean, you can't sugarcoat it. His California Crown race with a dumpster fire, it was terrible. He was never looked like a threat really at any point. And for them to come right back and have him in a spot like this, I'm going to take as a positive that, for whatever reason, he just didn't fire. I was a little bit reluctant. I didn't like him going into the California Crown because I didn't like the Shared Belief. But to your point, the fact that you've won at the trip at the track, I think is a nice, is it the end all be all? No, but I do think it's a nice feather in your cap, especially if you're trying to separate some contenders in here. At least this configuration is not an issue for him. I'm not sure what kind of trip he pulls, because the pace on the inside is seemingly wicked. I mean, I think you're going to see 44 and change for the half. I can't imagine
right?
You don't, right? Like, Saudi Crown has to go. I also don't know that I love him being here in general. Tio Santini, he just got off the vets list, but he's a speed type. Although with the way he's been working, I don't know how quick he's going to be early on. Full Serrano is a wickedly fast horse if they want to go. Yeah. And so there's 2. And then beyond that, I think you've got a couple other horses that are going to flash some gas. Seize the Gray. All his wins come when he goes to the front for the most part. Other than the Pat Day, he's going to be forwardly placed. We know that. So I think this is going to be a hot pace. I don't love the draw, and I'm a little bit curious about why specifically Jose, but Arad as well, aren't on Mufasa the 12. Um, I just think he's a good horse. The first start in the U.S. not great. He didn't have any real excuse. He came back and he was awesome at Colonial. He broke the track record that day, going 7/8 of a mile. Colonial's main track was playing all meat like an absolute highway. So the Fig's only a 99, but he went, I think, 19 and change for 7/8 of a mile.
Yep.
And then his Vosburg was really good. So I think he's a nice horse. I don't love that far out kind of a draw, but if we just mentioned all that speed to the inside, I think they're going to go. I don't think he's going to be too wide. You pick up Tyler, so you don't really lose much. But I find it curious that the Ortiz brothers aren't here. And the other big piece for me with this horse, guys, is the idea that when he was in Chile, he was a 2-turn horse going longer. So I think he's probably just a good racehorse, and maybe you do get something close to 10 or 12 with that draw, and I'd take that to wrap things up.
Absolutely, yeah. You're definitely going to get a fair price on him. Tyler Gaffleone, obviously no slouch in the saddle, as he's the leading rider in Kentucky basically every meet they have. Comes out here, and he's on a very talented horse that should appreciate the stretch out. I'm not personally a fan of Practical Jokes going 2 turns, but they've done it somewhat successfully. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Domestic Product is also at a Practical Joke. Yes, he is. So I think this horse is interesting. A horse that also I think is going to ensure that there's pace is Skippy Longstocking, drawn out at post 14. His main way to go is kind of to the front, given it's been in longer races. So maybe they try and do something a little different, but I think he's going to need to save ground somehow. And with most of the speed drawn, 1, 2, 3, and 6, maybe he's sent hard just to try and clear and maybe sit in that second flight. Not exactly sure what you do with Skippy Longstocking. All I know is I'm going to fade him at all costs.
I'm with you there. Skippy is such a tough read. We go back to horses that, you're on, you're off, you're on, you're off. I thought he had finally figured the whole thing out in the Harlan's Holiday in 2022. Bet him at 9-1 in the Pegasus at the beginning of January 23. Never ran a step. Terrible. Comes right back and wins the Challenger by 3. So he's just been that kind of horse for me. Watch him air on Saturday. I don't know what kind of trip he possibly. I mean, not only is it 14 guys, but you both know better than most. Like you're breaking into the turn going a mile. So I don't care if he steps on the gas and Arad rides the hair off of him. He still can't be any less than 5 wide into the first turn.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I don't like the setup for him. I suppose, Pipeline's not a slow horse either. They're going to have to go with him as well. And I wonder if he's sort of I don't want to say de facto rabbit for Cagliostro, but both Cherie's horses got rough draws, but Cagliostro at least can sit a little bit and finish. Pipeline's got one way to go, I think, if he's going to be competitive in here. So this pace, I'd be stunned if it was, unless the track is playing like quicksand, which I don't expect it to. I'd be stunned if this wasn't, in the 44 and 445 range for a half.
I completely agree. Pipeline wasn't even a horse I kind of considered to be part of the pace, but yeah, he's absolutely going to be the more I look at him. The de facto rabbit, I think he's there, to ensure pace, and he has a running style that also complements Cagliostro. So at the same point, it's kind of like you can have one or the other. It's like one of those uncoupled entries that we see, with Chad Brown in the turf races where he'll Eric Canzel or Florent Giroux go 56 seconds to the half mile, and all of a sudden a 42-1 shot wins. So, but I think, they got to be going sub 45 for this half. I don't see any way around it with the amount of absolute need the lead types that are in this race. It could set up for something monstrous in terms of an upset. In terms of who, I'm still working that one out. I was on with Noah Maher on the HHH, and I said 3 Technique might have a shot just based on he likes to come from well out of it. I don't know that he has the numbers that are going to stack up, but it's just I'm trying to pick my way through this race and find something that'll work.
The numbers almost don't matter when your best chances are to fall apart and you're a deep closer. Who cares?
Absolutely.
You're 30-1.
Agreed.
You get the best late pace figures. It doesn't matter.
You may have a final time of 37 for the mile, but it doesn't make a difference if everybody's finishing in 20, 26, 27.
Yeah. Absolutely. Jackson, I think I'm on the horse that you might want to speak about, because it's a horse that's definitely another hard trier in here.
Yeah, I thought he had a decent look. He's at least drawn somewhat towards the inside relative to the rest of this field. He got really good at Gulfstream in the winter and the spring. And then, they give him some time off. He's only ran twice this year. So if he's got to improve off of those numbers, obviously, but he is still just a 4-year-old. I thought his last race wasn't as bad as it might indicate. It was one of those races where it was a small field, but the deepest closer won. They kind of dueled. And he did hang on for second. Maybe he just didn't love the slop, but I just thought he might get a really nice trip in here, because I don't think he's as fast as the other speedballs, but he might just get first jump on the deep closers.
Yeah, absolutely. He's a hard trying horse, and always is somewhere thereabouts when the finish line comes. Matt, I can't thank you enough for joining us tonight. I know you're obviously busy out with your family. Again, congratulations on soon to be welcoming a new one into the world. And before we get you out of here, who do you think is I guess is the most likely winner over the 2 days of Breeders' Cup weekend, if you have one? And then who is a vulnerable favorite that you think is maybe just going to be overbet, overplayed? And
I would say, I'm going to say the likeliest winner is Torpedo Anna. It's kind of the obvious pick there. Again, I don't know that I'm in a rush to bet her, but I think she either wins for fun, or all of a sudden the narrative changes around her. A favorite that probably City of Troy. I mean, if we're just going off the morning line at 5-2, I just think that's a tough favorite to sit there with a straight face and say, yeah, at 2.5 to 1, I think he's a good bet. And if you do and you're right, congratulations, I was wrong. I think long term that's not going to work for you, but and I have to be honest, from a fan standpoint, I would love to see him go out there and just run a hole in the wind, because then maybe we would actually be seeing an all timer. But I don't know, man. It's an awfully short number, and he's been bet like this over. I mean, he's shorter than 5-2 overseas, I believe.
Yeah,
I think
he's
in the
7-4.
range.
I think is what Howard was saying.
He's even shorter than that. So he's 8-5. I mean, it's insanity. For a horse that I have no idea if he can stand up on the dirt.
Right. There's no idea about it. And he's going to be that short of a price when the window's open too. He's going to be, 8-5, 9-5. And that's just too short.
I feel like there's always one horse in the Classic that takes money that you don't expect to. And I don't know who that is this year. That would be the only other thing that I'd throw out there, is just keep an eye on that. It's without fail. There's always the year that Tom's d'Etat went off favored. He expected to be bet, but I think he was like 4th choice on the morning line, and he went off as the favorite. So, there's going to be a horse in here that I look at and I'm like, and they'll get bet inevitably.
I'm going to guess it's going to be Baffert with the Tory
Newgate
off that long layoff where he just barely hung late.
Yeah.
Decent post. I don't know. That's my guess.
No, that's a good call.
That's a good one.
And the numbers came back fast for that race too, aside from Beyer. But Time, Form, and Thoroughgraph, they got good numbers for that California Crown. So
they did. And that was first off the bench. That was a good call, Jackson. That's why I like having you on as my co-host, because that's great insight right there. But yeah, no, I could definitely see that horse getting bet a lot more than people think. And I mean, Baffert at Del Mar on Breeders' Cup weekend. I mean, are we really we can't be too irresponsible and ignore that horse too much, right?
That's kind of where I landed with the juvenile race on Friday. I mean, I'm going to go to Gaming. I don't know if he's good enough. His workouts in the morning, I don't think I've seen one workout where he's had a workmate that I've been impressed with. I mean, I think the workmate basically dusts him every time, but I get the impression that he's just kind of a goofball and he hasn't figured the whole thing out yet. And you're telling me Baffert at 8 to 1 with a rat up at Del Mar?
Right.
Yeah, I'll take a chance.
I will say, I have been giving Ryan a hard time because I love Gaming and security, and he told me that Citizen Bull is the best horse he's ever seen look in the paddock. So I went to bet Citizen Bull instead after I loved Gaming all week.
No!
What I didn't tell Ryan was I also watched the workouts the morning of, and Gaming was getting dusted. leading up into the futurity and still ran off the screen that day. So maybe he's just not a morning workout horse.
Yeah, that's my guess, is that maybe he's just one of those horses. I'm trying to remember who Baffert had another one of the More Spirit, maybe one of them that just they just didn't do much in the morning, and then come race day they ran. And you find that occasionally, and then conversely, you find the horses that in the mornings, they look like Secretariat out there, and then when they actually get into a race, they're 6 beating 25.
Yeah, absolutely. And that point on gaming is a good one. Jackson, I had talked to somebody over at Santa Anita this past, I guess 2 weeks ago now, and they told me like, hey, there's this horse in the morning that worked with gaming. It's worked with like Citizen Bull. Name is Cipriani, and whenever she debuts, she looks like a monster. So I texted, I was like, all right, this sounds like a real horse, and obviously gaming in the morning works, man. And then Cipriani runs off the screen, so it's like, okay, well maybe that was just one against a better horse. But watching gaming's works, he is just a bit of a goofball in the morning, and he almost just doesn't take it serious. He's like how Odell was in the warm-ups, where he's just doing one-handed catches all the time, and then he kind of locked in come game time. So gaming's pretty much the same way. But yeah, Jackson, you and I getting off of Flavian Pratt and Baffert at 7-2 in the futurity will never not haunt me at Del Mar.
That's a tough one to swallow. Yeah.
That's part of the game. Matt, thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening to join us. I really appreciate all the awesome insight and analysis you gave us. And again, congratulations and best of luck this Breeders' Cup season.
Guys, likewise, thanks for having me on. Apologies again for the little hiccup at the beginning. Again, you'd think by now I would have all the tech stuff straightened out. Always keeping you on your toes. Technology is great when it works.
It is. It is for sure, but you're great all the time. So again, thank you. Take care, and hope to talk to you soon.
All right, guys. Be well. Good luck.
You too. Bye. Awesome. That was Matt Bernier. Awesome to have him on. That was really great of him to take the time out of his day. Obviously, he's having a kid soon, so he did not need to give us as much time as he just gave us, which was just about an hour.
I saved you again. I could have told the story, but we're still going to save it for a good time.
Yep, you could. I wasn't going to get into that other work, mate. Don't worry. I was just going to save just going to talk about Cipriani, and we'll get into the that other one later. So well, for everybody that stuck around with us through the hour and 45 minutes, thank you. Real quick, I do want to announce the other giveaway announcement that we have going on. It's going to be for this Saturday. Again, subscribe to the channel. Same kind of layout. It's for book number 3 of A Better Way of Thinking by Matt Miller. Picked a winner in the payout price of the Breeders' Cup Classic. Whoever gets closest is going to win that 3rd copy. And then again, just get in touch with me. Michael Saletta, if you are watching, please reach out to me so I can get you that book sent over to you. Congratulations to you. Don't forget to go enter the giveaway in our last video covering the giveaway where, you pick the winner in the payout price of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. And thank you everybody for watching. Please subscribe. Please like, please, turn on the post notifications, all that stuff. It's somewhere over there, somewhere down there, wherever it is. Go ahead and do that. We thank you all for watching. I have been Ryan. This has been Jackson Show on Twitter. What's on Twitter?
Lang scratched the Philly Mare.
Oh, well, it's backwards when you show it on your screen.
No, it wasn't. It was perfect.
I think it was. Well, all right. Either way, I guess it is forward. Okay.
It was between some crazy play apparently in the World Series. So.
Well, there we go. Ylang for Aiden O'Brien, ridden by Ryan Moore, is out. I imagine Ryan Moore is probably going to ride Content now. I don't think he's not going to have a mount in that race.
I don't know.
That'd be surprising.
He has some contract, so maybe he's required to tell Frankie.
I'm pretty sure they have contracts overseas. Yeah. Like Buick's only for Godolphin. Oisin I don't know. I don't want to say anything wrong, but anyway. Ylang out of the Breeders' Cup. So thank you everybody for watching. Until